It is a brand new edition of Flyers Daily for Monday, October 7th, 2024. If I recall, I think October 7th, maybe it was the 10th last year when the puck dropped on the season. But nonetheless, it'll be Friday this week. Programming note real quick. We're going to go to our new schedule starting on Wednesday. So we'll have episodes for you on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We will not be doing weekend episodes this season. Boo! No, I know, but there's a reason for it. We'll get into that later. Flyers Daily is always presented by Ticketmaster. Make more memories live. Bill, that's the first time I've gotten a boo from myself here on the podcast.
yeah, that's you're not having a good day when you're booing yourself, right?
I'm slacking. I'm getting up there in years. I got to preserve my energy.
Exactly.
You can read Bill's work at PhiladelphiaFlyers.com, NHL.com, and HockeyBuzz.com, and there's tons to talk about in regards to the Philadelphia Flyers and the NHL and the world of hockey. But, Bill, preseason is over. It is officially done. We'll get the official roster coming up today. Before we kind of get to that, I have two regrets about the preseason that I'm bummed we didn't get to see. And one of them is Denver Barkey, and the other one is Samu Tuamala. Because I had both of those guys in my training camp preview of guys to look at to see where they were year to year. Now, Tuamala obviously last year played a ton in the AHL. It was kind of a tale of two seasons for Samu. For Barkey, just a magical year with the London Knights. But unfortunately, he came down with mono, and we didn't get to see him. That's probably my biggest regret of this camp at this point.
Yeah, it was unfortunate. And it really kind of goes back to the summer. I guess you're going to have to get it out of the way and start the season on time with London and get going on his draft plus 2 year. I really wanted to see his progress from last September to this September, because I think that sometimes tells you more than what he does once the second after draft junior season starts.
Yeah, he's going to destroy that league this year anyway.
Yeah. I mean, he was a 100-point guy last year.
Yeah.
Right, and top penalty killing guy, played all situations. You expect him to do really well in that, and London is still a powerhouse team anyway.
Yep.
So they're still a threat to win another championship. I think for Denver, the things that I think that we would like to see is he barely missed out on the World Juniors last year. He was one of the last cuts in his draft plus 1 year. Make it this year. Take it to the next step. Be a contributor. Potentially on a medal team, on a team that figures to have at least three, maybe more, depending on Jett Luchanko. But at least three Flyers prospects on there, because you got to figure Bjarnason.
Yeah, and Bonk.
We wanted to go, and then Bonk is a shoo-in, because he was there last year. So it'd be pretty cool if there are as many as four Flyers prospects there, but just really take the next steps. It's unfortunate for the kid that he didn't have a camp, but at least he starts the season on time.
Yeah.
And with Tuamala, he had a good rookie camp. He scored the game-winning overtime goal in the second rookies game, and then unfortunately had an injury and he wasn't able to return until the end of camp. But he's healthy, and actually he got that little reward of practicing with the NHL squad on Friday before he sent down. So that's a pretty clear message that we like how much you progressed in the last year. You're not far away. You're in the mix for a call-up. Just keep plugging away. So I really would love to see if he can make his NHL debut this year. That I think is the next step for him.
Yeah, he looked a little more dynamic to me in rookie camp and in the rookie games. I thought he pressed offensively more.
Yeah.
He just looked like a more confident offensive player. Some of the things he was willing to try. So that's the regret. But Bill, really the big story is we've seen the players that have had to go through waivers and everything that goes with it. Lexell goes through waivers. Emil Andre did not have to go through waivers, but he is sent down, and Ginning clears, everybody clears. But Jett Luchanko is still here. Now, I don't think any of us, when you and I were talking back on draft night, I mean, that seems like an eternity ago at this point, but it really wasn't, that Jett Luchanko would be at camp at this point. Even I assumed he'd have been back 10 days, back in Guelph for 10 days already, getting reacclimated with his team there and getting ready for the season. But that's not the case. He is still here. And while he got off to a really fast start in the preseason, I don't know if I would term it as he knocked the door down. there's a lot of nuance to his game and a lot of detail, and sometimes that stuff doesn't show up on a score sheet. But the fact that he's still here is pretty shocking to me. And really the main thing I can attribute it to is speed up the middle. Maybe they think, at least right now, let's see how he does, because he may be our best option in a 3C situation because of that speed.
Well, certainly that's a big piece of it. I think other than Owen Tippett, he might have been the fastest guy in camp.
Yeah.
So that certainly is a big part of it. I mean, you can see him just flying up and down the ice. That's such a big asset in the game. I think as much as the speed, it's his smarts, his compete level is really good.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you learn more from what a player does in a situation where he doesn't initially win a battle. I really like his compete because it happened multiple times where he got knocked off the puck just because he's up against bigger guys, and he always battled, and quite often he got the puck back.
Yeah.
Or he wouldn't throw it away blindly. He would just make a little subtle play, right? Just a little either getting it in deeper or finding an open guy, not putting himself in a position where he's just going to get taken away from him and it's going to go the other way. Just a lot of those little kind of details. His details are really good. I do have to agree with you that I thought that after the rookie game and that game in Washington,
6-2 win.
The 6-2 win, yeah, had two really nice assists in that game. I don't think the rest of the games he played combined, I could name more than 2-3 really big plays that he made. Usually the bar for an 18-year-old, as you said, is breaking down the door, right? There's just no holding the kid back. I don't think he met that threshold. I just don't. I do have concerns because I don't want a situation where we know he's good defensively. I think you want to develop him into an offensive player. You don't draft him that high to get potentially a guy who's he's a good checker. He's responsible defensively. Yeah. I mean, two-way player, 200-foot player to me also has an offensive impact component to it as well. I don't know that he's ready to make an offensive impact. I thought on Mike Knubel's podcast, and Mike would know, having been in the league, right, and really knowing the game as well as he does, he said sometimes you have a young player, you're in camp, and you're making that strong impression. You're a top prospect. What you're getting is a lot of positive feedback from the coaches. They're doing video. They'll show a couple good plays that you made. You're not typically the guy singled out for something that they want to be better. But what Mike said was that once the season starts, that all changes.
Yeah, everybody's fair game.
Everyone is fair game, and there's another level you have to hit. And if you're not quite hitting that level, it can be a little shock to the system. I mean, everything now ratchets up to a higher level out there.
Yep.
I think we've all seen players who go to the NHL right away, and some of them even have success. A little bit off the bat, the first month, the first 6 weeks, the first 2 months. If that's assuming, of course, he's here beyond the 9 games, and then they hit a wall. And it becomes a struggle, and you've potentially burned the first year. I know we all lived through, or those of a certain age anyway, lived through Dinas Zubris, and it's funny because I don't think you could say a guy who played 20 years in the NHL was not a success. The guy played 20 years in the league. He played a little bit with Ovechkin when Ovechkin first broke in. He became a very good third-line player. But I remember when Zuby was in camp, one of the local newspapers, which was so foolish. I don't think you ever do a thing like that as a player. They labeled him Baby Yager, right? And I remember it was WIP radio, and there was a whole day of calls. Oh, Baby Yager has to make the team, right? And Baby Yager made the team, and lo and behold, he was no Baby Yager. He was a nice young player, big, strong, but he was never he wasn't a superstar, right? But I think he would have been a higher level player he been developed a little more patiently. In his case, he went right from Junior A to the Pembroke Lumber Kings right to the NHL. So he bypassed major junior, and at 18 was in the NHL. And I think he became something less that he could have and probably should have been. Keeping in mind that he had a pretty solid career as a third line guy. There's a guy on the Flyers right now, Rasmus Ristolainen, who high first round pick by Buffalo, physically mature, and finds himself as a teenager on Buffalo's top pair, playing against other teams' top lines. And I really think that hurt Risto. I think that it delayed his development a lot. I think he might have, and thankfully he's been with Brad Shaw, and Brad Shaw has helped him unlock, working within some limitations, figuring out what he can and can't do, which for years he would hit everything that moved. And that was great, except he was so often out of position.
Yeah.
And he really
he'd run himself right out of place.
So often, even his first year in Philly, there was a lot of adjustment. And now, now he's found what works for him and what doesn't. But let's say Risto had been developed properly, because I don't think Buffalo developed him properly at all, and he breaks in at 20 instead of 18, he might have hit that in a higher level sooner.
Yeah.
So we've seen that with other players. Lucas Spiza, you name the guy who was right in the NHL at 18, and even I'll give just one last example. Braden Shen, when he was with LA, he got that trial up at the NHL, and then he went back down again. I don't care how physically or mentally, emotionally mature the kid is. When you start in the NHL, the next thing you know, you're back in junior hockey. It feels like a demotion. No matter how much you try to feel positive about it, take good things away, you're a little out of sorts for a while.
Bill, it is a demotion. It should feel like that.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So, but if you're going to come in.
But you don't have to go through it, is what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to come in and if you're going and figuring, well, he's going to get as many as 9 games and then go down, I don't see a benefit to that. I see more, well, if you think he's ready enough for 9 games, then you're ready. You feel he's ready enough to keep him all season, possibly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't love going in with he's going to just be here a short time and go back. Would it hurt Luchanko in the long run? I hope not. I don't think it would.
Yeah.
I don't want to take any chances. So that's where I stand.
Yeah, I got an interesting DM from a guy. Eddie Allison sent this to me, and while I could see this approach, but I think the situations are different, and here's why. He said, "Hi, Jason. Do you think the Flyers' plan with Jett is similar to what the Ducks did last year with Leo Carlsson? He played 55 games with the Ducks, and they eased him into the NHL to let his body develop. Jett seems ready, and if they're patient with him at the NHL level, I think this is a gamble that could pay off." Now, the obvious difference there is the Flyers are not where the Anaheim Ducks are. They're not hoping to be where the Anaheim Ducks are from a competitive standpoint. Like they're not Flyers fans. They are way ahead of the Anaheim Ducks. They got some nice pieces there, including Carlson, obviously, Cutter Gauthier, and others. They have some good pieces, yeah. But they aren't there yet. So that is a difference in maybe how you can bring Carlson and ease him into 55 games. Can you do that with Jett, and does that make sense? In theory, I'm not against that kind of arrangement as long as everybody kind of. But I don't want the players sitting upstairs thinking I'm not good enough and I'm scratched. Yeah, it's got to be that's got to be articulated, because while he is mature on and off the ice and his game is mature beyond his years, players at this level are not used to any sort of rejection. They don't get cut from teams, Bill. It's very rare.
Yeah, oh, for sure. And even I know some people said, well, what about Coots? Right, Coots came right to the NHL.
Mm-hmm. But he'd have been a number 1 or 2 overall pick had he not had mono in his draft year.
If he had mono, right? And he was also physically fairly mature.
Yep.
Big, tall kid, right? Already very. I mean, not that Luchanko isn't good defensively, but Couturier came in and almost instantly was your shutdown center.
Yeah.
And the other difference in here too is that Coots is a December birthday.
Yeah.
right? Whereas Jett actually turned 18 August 21st, right before the season, so he won't even be 90 until late next summer.
Yeah.
If he were to burn this ELC year, you're talking about a 20-year-old restricted free agent. That's a lot very quickly. So, while I really think highly of him, I think there's so much to be excited about of the player he can be, and I think he will be, particularly as he continues to add some muscle, add some experience. To me, sometimes when I really like a player, I'm actually more inclined to be even a little bit more conservative with him. Maybe that's not right, but but I think that there's a ton to be excited about here. But yeah, I think that the level of demands here are once you're up in the show, it's a whole other thing.
It's unforgiving as it gets, Bill.
Very unforgiving. And
People say it all the time. Well, what's it going to hurt if you just play? It's humbling, like how good that league is. I mean, we've seen it chew up and spit out players. I don't think Luchanko would get chewed up and spit out, but again, like you, I think I didn't know anything about this kid on the night they drafted him. I'm not a draft guy, right? But after what I've seen from development camp and rookie camp and through training camp, I don't think he's going to be a special player. I think he's going to be a really good player, though.
Yes, that's all, yeah.
I think he's going to be a leader too, the way he carries himself already.
Yes.
And I do get guarded about that, and I sometimes do want to get a little safe about that.
Yeah,
that's just the way I am.
And I think, I just think there's so much on the table for him here where, you go to the summer showcase for the World Juniors, right? He started on the fourth line, and by the end he was on the second, and he was one of Canada's best players. I don't want to see his season kind of get interrupted. I want to see the flow of a whole year. If they can, if they do that, or
Bill, he might just be hitting a development burst here too.
Yeah, which would be fantastic. He takes just a big leap over this next year.
He'd been a top 5 pick in next year's draft. He was born just a couple weeks later.
If he'd been born just a couple weeks later, and he would have been, a late draft year player in that case, and been a little bit older and more mature than some of the other players too. And so, I think all those are positive things. The only time I saw him play last year, I mean, I do follow the draft, but the only time I really saw him play last year, because I was mostly, London was so fun to watch.
Yeah.
I remember when Morgan Frost was the Sioux Greyhounds. That was the team I'd always watch. I'd see other prospects from other teams, see most of their games. It was that way with London, but I did actually happen to tune in to Guelph's playoff series, and they got their heads handed to them in that series, but he was their best player because
in all phases too, right?
All phases, and that compete never stopped. The motor never stopped. Those are all great things and all exciting things. So
the thing about him too is he doesn't just predicate everything on speed.
Right.
He has. That's where I see like the most maturity in his game is he's got some nuance. He doesn't just try and go 500 miles an hour all the time. He'll change speeds on him. While I said that I didn't think Luchanko, was going to be like a superstar, Michkov has not done anything this preseason to make me think that he won't. Bill, I don't think you could have asked. From the moment we heard he was definitely coming over, to having his introductory press conference, to the contract being signed, him putting on the jersey next to Danny Briere, all of that stuff to this moment now, I don't think there's been a wrong turn. The things that he has said, the way he's conducted himself on, and you could tell he's having fun. Like the way his teammates mobbed him after the overtime winner, like trying to mess up his hair through the helmet, the whole thing, right? Like there's a buzz around this kid. The guys on the team feel it. Everybody knows he's got something special, and he didn't do anything this preseason to lessen that at all. I think he loves it.
Yeah, for sure. And it wasn't just the overtime winner. It wasn't some of the passes he made just in and of themselves, though those are all really nice plays. It wasn't just the I mean, there's almost no highlights other than Urson and the Konechny goal in that Boston game. But just the play.
But he sets up the Konechny goal by waiting to shoot it.
I was just going to say, yeah. Just the way that he kind of skated a little downhill into his shot. He was so patient when he released it and precise. He was aiming for the pads and waiting just for Konechny to arrive. So that became a pretty easy goal once he was there for the rebound.
Had he shot it earlier, Konechny's not there yet.
Right.
For the rebound. Then you're chasing it on your backhand or whatever. He waits for Konechny to cross and clear, and then he's just slamming it into an open net. The kid's been spectacular. I'm not going to sit here and go crazy with my expectation on his numbers for the season. It's going to be harder once the season starts for him. That being said, I expect to be like, did you just see what he did a lot of times this year?
Yes.
The way he pulls puck out of his feet, Bill, without even a stutter of a stride, are remarkable. He must have played soccer somewhere along the way. His feet, he's not the greatest skater.
No.
Incredibly balanced on his feet.
Yeah.
But boy, the way he can pull pucks out of his feet is stunning.
Oh yeah. And his edge work is special too.
Oh, it's all that balance, right?
Yeah. I mean that just jumps out at you because you said just in a straight line, the speed is average.
Yeah.
You know, it's not deficient, but it's nothing special. But all the whole package of skill and smarts and anticipation and competitiveness. I mean, go on and on about the elements that you see are there already at 19, and he's and his intelligence too. It's like, you know, learning English when you don't speak any is hard, right?
Yeah.
Particularly a Russian speaker, because it's a pretty big jump to learn how to speak English, and he's learning so fast.
Yeah.
I mean, that's this kid's going to be so fun to watch, and he loves the play, and that unbridled enthusiasm is really contagious. You feel it upstairs in the box.
You can. He jumps on the ice, and your eyes have no choice but to go to him. It's like a magnet. It's unbelievable, and I can't wait to watch him. And I can't wait till he can learn to speak the language as well as Ivan Fedotov has.
Yes.
I talked to Fedotov on Friday after practice. I didn't tape it. It wasn't for an interview or anything. I just went into the room after just to talk to him. And I started off the conversation. I said, dude, I got to tell you, like, I'm blown away at your English. Because I think I sent you a text about this, about how much his English improved, and I saw it in a press conference. Then he and I were having a conversation, and I mean, it was unbelievable how good, not only his, ability to converse was, his vocabulary, the amount of words, and the big thing he said was, at my age, you want to be independent. You won't want to be reliant on everybody else. He goes, when I could learn to speak the language, I felt like I really fit in here because I felt independent. Like I had to go and order a sandwich or something, you know what I mean? And like, I swear European people or people overseas can learn how to speak English way faster than we could figure out their language. I think it's just,
no doubt.
I was blown away at where his English is at. I sat with him and Deris Gurianov at the end of last year, because Gurianov had to explain to him when I said hello.
Yeah, like he language is so lose it or use it. I mean, he started with English a long time ago.
Yeah.
He didn't just start learning it, but you don't use it, it gets rusty.
Yeah.
And you could see he really wanted to do his interviews in English, but it was a struggle. It was rusty, and he still had things he had to sharpen up, but he tried, always tried. And I mean, it's remarkable how just over the course of the summer, he's like a guy who's been over here for quite a number of years. And I said that's not typical of Russian players. Most Russian players come over speaking almost none, just because they're not exposed to it. But so to have that previous exposure was good, but just to take on those kind of rudimentary skills and build off of them the way he has.
Yeah.
The level of confidence he has is he's a very approachable guy too. Like, he's not. He's
a goofy guy.
Yeah.
But nobody knew it because he couldn't. Like the Russian teammates, like Gurianov knew it, but nobody else knew it because he didn't feel comfortable to be goofy because he didn't know how to speak. Funny thing is, you say use it or lose it with language. I remember going back to the pandemic when Robert Hagg was still here. And I was doing interviews like kind of the way we're taping this over StreamYard. And I did an interview. We were doing long-form interviews, and they weren't just hockey interviews because there was no hockey. We didn't even know when it was coming back. And I was talking to Hager, and we did the whole interview, and he texted me later that night and said, hey, first he said, can you take something out? I didn't like the way I answered it. And then he said, you know what, can we just redo the whole thing? Because I haven't spoke English in a while, and I didn't like the way I answered some questions. I'm really rusty with my English all of a sudden. And I said, yeah, absolutely. We retaped it the next day, blah, blah, blah. But this is a Swedish guy that had been here for a number of years, played junior hockey here. Yes. You know what I mean? But used it or lose it. He wasn't using it because he was back home in Sweden and wanted to do that. So I wanted to bring that up. Bill, and looking at this camp, I want to highlight some guys that I thought had a really good camp and some guys that I thought were maybe a little underwhelming. Now, when I say they're underwhelming, that's not a harbinger of what's to come for this season. Sometimes preseason doesn't mean anything. Some guys just don't rev up in the preseason or slow starters that way. But there's a couple guys in particular that I thought were a bit underwhelming in the preseason. Number one, I thought Ryan Poehling was underwhelming in preseason. I thought Noah Cates was a little underwhelming. I thought Tyson Forster was a little underwhelming, frankly. Yinning and Adard, that part is what it is. They've been sent down. I mean, Adard, I thought had a horrendous preseason. But overall, Poehling, Cates, and Forster were a bit underwhelming. Maybe York was too, but I don't worry about him at all when the games matter. But those other three I was a little underwhelmed by.
I agree in all three. And with the exception of one game that he played, I'll also add Owen Tippett into that. But also saying that he's a veteran now. I mean, young veteran, 25, but he can have a veteran's preseason. Just get himself ready to play.
Yeah.
With Noah Cates, I mean, he has the team made, but as of right now, and remember, this is a guy who has never been scratched once in the NHL, and since John Tortorella's been here, at least, I don't ever recall him being benched in game. Maybe he started a game down in the lineup, a line or two, but never a game where he
missing shifts,
right?
Or a period or something like that. Like Farabee, who did two shifts and worked the door. Yeah. Konechny benched to the entire second period in Pittsburgh.
And Farabee, it happened after one game, after one shift.
Yeah. And people ask Torts, why didn't Farabee play? He didn't listen.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is a player who the coach really likes, clearly respects a lot. But right now, with Jett Luchanko seemingly poised to make the team, he's your fifth line center.
Yeah.
So
he's not in the opening night lineup.
Not unless there's an injury, not unless there's just something unexpected that happens, which will be the first time that he sits. So no one can ever get too comfortable, and I'm not saying that Noah did, but and I'm throwing out that last preseason game really against
Jersey, Utica,
the Utica Devils essentially, and because that's a game you expected an NHL guy playing against American League competition, and playing really the first line center. It's going to get make some plays, and he did. As you would expect him to. But no, I thought that Noah Cates was a little bit underwhelming. Tyson Forster, I think he has a little history as a little bit of a slow starter.
Yeah.
So I'm not worried. He certainly
a couple years ago he didn't have a good camp, didn't make the team out, and then last year got off to a slow start to the season. I'd like to see that turnaround post haste here comes beginning Friday.
So there's no real concern level here. He was so good, so consistently good, even when he wasn't scoring. That was one of because he ran very kind of hot and cold in terms of scoring. He would go sometimes. Even it happened at the end of the season too. He was one of the many guys who wasn't scoring late in the season. Yeah. But he had a stretch where I think he went into December with one goal, and then the next thing you know he has 8.
Yeah,
and then he has, so I think he's just going to kind of be that player. I think he'll score with more frequency as the year goes along, really just as long as he keeps playing a strong two-way game, gets to the scoring areas, and goals will come for him. So there's nobody that I really, in terms of the forwards, really, that I'm worried about. On defense, I thought it was a little bit of a mixed bag. Really like Ristolainen's preseason. Was surprised that after coming back from the injury, he really hit the ground running, and I thought he was really, really good in the preseason. I thought that his partner Zamula was solid enough to keep his spot there. Drysdale was some good plays, some not so good plays. I think it's still a work in progress with him. Nick Sealer is a little banged up right now.
Yeah, I like Drysdale just for the way he moved after the surgery.
Yes. And I was concerned about him.
Yeah, me too.
During a skating test, particularly because he, tearing up the scar tissue, whatever. He was laboring.
Yeah.
During the skating test, I thought, oh boy, here we go. But no, he was fine. I mean, it was literally just getting through that and getting out there. So he's moving well. We've talked about the muscle he's added. So those are all good signs.
Brink had a good preseason too.
He did, and not just the first game either, where he had the 2 goals. And
he's moving better.
He's moving better. He's gaining a little explosiveness.
Yeah,
a little more first stride explosiveness, which is I think what he needed.
Emil Andre is another guy that really popped for me.
Really good camp. Really
good at both ends of the ice too. We know about the offensive and the vision. That pass he sends in Garnet Hathaway off of the breakaway, that was an unbelievable.
Yes.
I mean, that was 3.5. I mean, that was probably 162 feet of the 200. I mean, it was unbelievable up the middle. I thought he had a great camp and he defended really well. To me, depending on who gets injured or who has to come out of the lineup, it's obvious he's the first guy if it doesn't have to be a guy with a physical prowess.
Yes.
On that blue line.
And particularly if you're able to get in additional small defensemen in the lineup. Yeah. That I think works a little bit against Emil right now.
Agreed.
Because the trend in the league. I mean, how often in the Boston game? Oh, they have such a big blue line because that's how the league's gone back to. The pendulum always.
The smallest guy was Charlie McAvoy. Yeah. Everybody else was over 6'4".
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was a gargantuan blue line, and that's kind of it's funny, in the '90s, if you were under really anything under 6 feet, but kind of anything under about 6'2",
yeah,
you had a hard time unless you were already established. There's there was an occasional rare guy that a Brian Rafalski type in the early 2000s would kind of buck that trend and get through.
Niedermeyer in the 90s was the rarity. Yeah. He wasn't a big guy, but
right. Yeah. And so, for sure. And then the pendulum swung back a little bit the other way. We went the faster, smaller guys. Now the pendulum's back this way, where the premiums on bigger guys. And not that a smaller guy like a Cam York doesn't have a role, because he certainly does, or Drysdale, but you don't want to go too small on the blue line. That's the current mantra. So that works a little bit against Emil, but at a certain point, if you play to a certain level, it doesn't really matter whether
not a factor anymore. Yeah,
whether you're a left or right shot, whether you're smaller or a little bit bigger. If you play at a certain level, you'll have a spot. So
He's going to tear up in the AHL before he comes up.
I think so too.
He's going to have a huge year, I think.
I think so too, and I think the Phantoms in general. Last year they led a lot of the power play, unlike the Flyers. Andre was a big piece of that. Leaksell was a big piece of that too, until he was brought up. So you add in a guy like Anthony Richard who got through waivers. I think the Phantoms actually have the potential to do some damage this year, be a better hockey team. So you want to have that depth, and you want to have guys that call up. We talked a little bit before about Tuamala. So you want to see guys knocking on the door.
Yeah,
and I was a little bit pleasantly surprised. Now, mind you, was in that meaningless last preseason game, but also the preseason game of the Phantoms. J.R. Avon looks really good. I mean,
he can flat out fly.
That goal that he scored going wide and then cutting in, that was an NHL kind of a goal. That was a goal scorer's goal.
Yeah.
And then you add in the fact that last year with the Phantoms, he was 4 for 6 in shootouts.
Yeah.
That'll help a guy too.
Yeah, so, he's finding a niche for himself.
For sure, and maybe he can work his way into a depth mix. I don't think he's going to be a top 6 forward by any stretch of the imagination. Yep. But a guy who can come in and contribute. They need that, a guy like Denye getting back on course after an off year last year. Really, you just want to have options, because that injuries are inevitable. your depth is going to be tested, and you're going to need guys like this. And last year there wasn't a ton to call up, really, truthfully. This year, hopefully that changes.
Let's talk lastly about the situation in goal, because I thought Fedotov had a kind of underwhelming preseason. Part of that is the combination that Ersson had an unbelievable preseason. I thought he looked incredibly sharp, and just a side-by-side comparison, that'll make Fedotov look underwhelming. Plus, I thought he was a little underwhelming to begin with, even without the Ersson factor. Obviously, Kolosov comes in late. I saw the highlights package of that preseason game he played against Hershey. Bill, he moves like an elite Russian goaltender, a few that we see in the league now. I mean, he is unbelievably athletic.
Yes.
I think he's got some things to learn for the NHL game. He's defaulting to the butterfly a little too early, and getting out of, kind of being down on his post and anything kind of below the hash marks. Needs to get up a little earlier there. Those things are very coachable, but this goaltending situation is going to be one that's interesting to monitor. Ersson cemented himself through the camp as the number one guy. Fedotov's the number two guy right now, but we'll see where this all goes. And I mean, McAnemy, I thought had a really good camp, limited as well. But overall, I feel pretty good about the goaltending position. I just don't know how it's all going to play out throughout this entire year.
Yeah, that's going to be something to monitor all season long. I don't know about you, Jason. I have mentally a 50-32 split with Ersson getting 50, maybe a couple more. Maybe you can stretch them a little bit further, not too much further.
Like a 54 kind of max, you feeling?
Yeah. I mean, if you get 54 out of them, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
54, 55.
Shesterkin's averaged 54 over the last 4 seasons.
So that in today's game, particularly with the travel.
Yeah.
Right. With
they have a lot of back-to-backs with the easier travel too on the East Coast.
Yes. So that's something to monitor all season long. But let's use 50 as a working number, and maybe you can stretch them a little further. 50-32. That's still a lot of games for Fedotov, and I think the way of the league now is every team needs a third goalie, and quite often you end up needing a fourth. So there's time. There's going to be time available, whether it's Kolosov, whether it's McAnemy, whether it's even Cal Peterson. Although I haven't liked Cal Peterson's preseason. So.
No, the Cal has not looked good.
Yeah, but there are opportunities, and he's a veteran in the group. So, right now, it's Fedotov's spot. Behind Ersson, but I don't know. We could be having this conversation the first week in November, and it looks different. December certainly could look different. So I think that the guys who are down there just keep plugging. You perform, and you never know what's going to happen. I think I still
for Kolosov, I just say make the necessary adjustments, work with your goalie coach with Brady, and dominate down there, and if there's a falter up there, you're going to get your chance and then never let it go.
Exactly. So, it's I think you always have to keep big picture in mind that you're playing to prove yourself with that opportunity.
Yeah.
I think we mentioned a couple of podcasts ago. To me, the ultimate seizing an opportunity. You remember that in 2010-11, Flyers had just lost to Chicago in the finals, and made an undrafted goalie from Russia that they're figuring was going to play the Phantoms, named Sergei Bobrovsky. Well, lo and behold, Bob ends up being your opening night starter, and lo and behold, he ends up becoming your primary starter most of that year. Now, everybody has their ups and downs. The playoffs, Flyers had that disastrous goalie carousel in the playoffs that year.
Lavi just kept pulling guys.
Yes, yeah,
they all lost confidence.
As much as I really like and respect Lavi as a coach, he mismanaged the goaltending in the playoffs to where they couldn't really rely on anybody.
I think he'd admit it now too.
I think he probably would, and that's where Ed Snyder and I mean literally, very literally, banged his fist on the table and said he wanted a firm solution to goaltending. And you had Brizgalov 1 year off of being a Vezina finalist, back-to-back years being the Coyotes MVP, and I know this for a fact too that Jeff Reese, who was the goalie coach at the time, said Bob's going to be fine. But the question that was asked is, well, I want to win a cup now. Is he ready to win a cup right now after 1 year? And he said, well, I can't promise that.
Yeah.
He said, but then go and get me. Let's go and get Brizgalov, and that's how all that went down.
Yeah, and Reeser knew about Bob's work ethic too. I mean, the guy's an animal, an absolute farm animal. I mean, he'd ride the bike for an hour at the highest speed you could get it to after playing, an overtime game.
For sure.
An animal.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the ultimate. Nothing is promised but an opportunity.
Yeah,
and he took the opportunity, and became a Vezina finalist, a cup winner. And when he was in Russia, he was playing on the worst team in the league, and so although his numbers were surprisingly good for a guy at such a horrible team,
kind of like Igor Zavragin right now, Bill.
Yeah, right. Zavragin is playing out of his mind on a really bad team.
He's got the highest save percentage in the entire league, in the entire Continental Hockey League, playing for Sochi.
Yeah, for playing for Sochi, and just got his first shot on a game where he was ahead alone most of the night.
Yeah. So, they got outshot in the one game, I think 45-13. They ended up winning the game. He had 43 saves on 45 shots. The guy's been an absolute animal. Yes. Like Shesterkin numbers, and this is now Draft Plus 2 for him, but this is Shesterkin numbers in Draft Plus 3. Yes. Like, really impressive, the performance he has. All right, last thing, Bill. I got a note from an email from my buddy Jimmy Shapiro, who sends me the odds every once in a while from all the different sports. And he sent me the updated NHL over-under on point totals for the season. Now, the Flyers opened this year at 89.5 points. They opened last year, by the way, at 76.5. They finished with 87, so they obviously went over. This year they opened at 89.5, but as we sit right now, they're at 85.5, according to Vegas. Do you like the over 85.5 I do.
I would take the over.
I like the over 89.5.
Yeah.
I think they're a 91-point team.
Yeah, no, I agree. If it was said 90.5, I'd be really hesitant. I might take the under just because it's
might buy a point.
yeah, exactly. So but said there, I absolutely take the over, and I don't even have to think twice about it.
Yeah, I do as well. I mean, I think there's a couple teams in the Metro that I don't feel any threat by. I think Pittsburgh's one of those teams. I think Washington's one of those teams. And Columbus is one of those teams. The ones I'm not so sure about, I'm not completely sure what the hell the Islanders are going to be. I don't think they're going to be – I mean, they're not a top 3 team in the East. The Devils are obviously off to a very good start. They go 2-0 against the Sabres overseas. But what are the Devils? Are the Devils sustainable with Sheldon Keefe there now, and Dougie Hamilton's back, and without Luke Hughes for the start of the season, is Jacob Markstrom going to solve all their issues in that? It potentially could. But then I look at Carolina. They're a playoff team for sure, but I don't know that they're a better team than they were a year ago to go further in that regard. And I think the Rangers are a wagon. I think the team that ends up winning, by the way, the President's Trophy this year is in the Atlantic Division, and I think it's the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think Craig Berube in year one.
Yes.
I worry about their goaltending and Wall a little bit, but in year one, I think Chiefs going to have that team humming.
Yeah.
And it won't mean a damn thing because it only matters in the playoffs there.
Well, exactly. Although in this case with the Atlantic Division, I think one of the big bugaboos with Toronto has been that 2-3 matchup.
They got to avoid it.
It's a killer.
Yep.
I mean, listen, you're playing a wild card team. There's still no walk in the park. Although last year Washington had no business in the playoffs. No. Right? It was unbelievable they were even there. But if you stay at because that 2-3, not only is that just a brutal series, that's only the first round.
Yeah.
So it's just a very hard road if you're on either side of that 2-3. I don't worry so much anymore about home ice because it doesn't seem to mean what it used to.
Agreed.
But to avoid the 2-3 finish first, I think will be huge for Toronto. I think Chief will be kind of relentless with them.
Yep.
And I think that you never know what happens once the playoff starts, but I have them winning the division. So
Yeah. Chief's going to be uncompromising is what he's going to be.
Yeah.
Lindy Ruff on the hot seat already at 0-2, Bill, in Buffalo?
Well, yeah. I mean, of course he has that past pedigree there in Buffalo. I mean, quite often second acts with a team are of course he was there forever the first time around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, geez, he was coaching Miroslav Shatan back then.
Isn't that wild? Yeah.
That is insane.
Yeah, it's crazy. It is absolutely crazy.
Who says you can't go home?
And I mean, I'm shocked that Lindy was even born in 1960. I thought he was as old as Torts.
Yeah.
but he's he made it into the 60s or later's club, which is 31 of the 32 coaches. But I mean, listen, Buffalo has to make the playoffs this year. So nobody has a ton of rope this year because it can't go. What is it, 14 years now?
Yeah, it's crazy. It is crazy, and the talent that has come through there and the picks and everything else. Darlene, the new captain, so we'll see where it goes. I can assure you they don't have to make the playoffs this year. They do. They would really like to, but they may not have to.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Bill, great stuff. We certainly covered a lot of ground in this episode. Check out Bill's work at PhiladelphiaFlyers.com, NHL.com, and HockeyBuzz.com. On Wednesday's episode, Flyers General Manager Danny Briere will be our guest. So we'll talk to Danny about the final roster and much more. Join us then on a brand new Flyers Daily.